We have had some issues with water. If you stick enough straws into a glass of water, it's going to empty faster.
This was supposed to be the water to put out the Palisades fire. This is the Santa Ynez Reservoir. It's the water supply basically for the Palisades. When they first started fighting the Palisades fire, they ran out of water extremely quickly. Wednesday, 3 a.m., they were basically out. And
I'm Drew, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Real Talk Today. Here at Real Talk, we don't just talk about relationships. We like to talk about real situations that affect real people. Today, we're going to take a look at what's going on over in California. Maybe we can get a few answers on how they could run out of water, if anything is going on as far as a conspiracy, or, just basic questions that I think need to be answered as soon as we come back.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't.
This report we're going to talk about now is going to show how the wildfires out here are not only affecting, the underclass, the poor, whatnot. It's affecting the rich and the famous also. Let's take a look at this right quick.
Remember the guy who won a historic $2 billion jackpot in a Powerball drawing a few years ago? He spent millions of his earnings on a waterfront property in Malibu. Now, many are saying his luck has run out as the property burns to the ground.
It's all that's left of a multi-million-dollar Malibu home. It belonged to none other than the winner of the biggest lottery jackpot in history, Edwin Castro. 2 years ago, Castro was dubbed the luckiest man in America.
$2.04 billion.
He splurged on real estate, including this opulent $3.8 million beachfront mansion, which is now just a pile of ash.
I'm so sad.
Beverly Hills 90210's Jenny Garth and husband Dave Abrams found shelter at the home of her ex-husband, Peter Facinelli.
So grateful for Peter for letting us stay.
This was Veep star Julia Louis-Dreyfus's home. It's incinerated. A heartbroken Ben Stiller spoke out on Stephen Colbert.
What's going on out there is just so devastating. I just keep thinking about all the people affected and the first responders who are working so hard to save people's lives.
Former NYPD Blue actor William McNamara has been keeping a video diary as the fires ravage his neighborhood.
I'm trapped right now behind this structure. I can't get either side of it because they'll see the embers. They'll come.
You see the way the fires are actually coming out in little pieces, like he said, he called it embers, like little sparks. That's basically when the wind catch dry leaves or whatnot, they've caught fire and it just starts sending sparks all over the place. And anything that's dry, anything that's synthetic or whatnot, and those little hot embers hit it, it's going to immediately go up in flames if there's no water to actually put it out immediately.
On both sides.
He manages to make his way out.
Yep, I think I'm back to safety.
Oh my God.
Musician Sheila E. evacuated with her instruments in the back seat of her car.
It's smoky. The air quality is bad. I just have my music in the car.
This is what Paris Hilton saw as she returned to her burned out home. Piles of rubble and smoldering ruins. The heartbreak is truly indescribable, she writes on social media.
That was my daughter's school, Governor.
A heated moment as Governor Gavin Newsom is confronted by an angry mom after her daughter's school burned down. He says he's on the phone with President Biden.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
Fitness guru Jillian Michaels lost her home during the 2018 wildfires, and she says the governor needs to do more.
If you looked at California as a corporation, you have a failing CEO.
We have had some issues with water. If you stick enough straws into a glass of water, it's going to empty faster.
The biggest ever wildfires have raged in Los Angeles' neighborhood for nearly a week. 24 people have been confirmed dead, 200,000 people have been displaced, and around 12,000 structures have been destroyed, along with 35,000 acres of land. Emergency officials have also faced a nightmare situation with fire hydrants running out of water. At some point this week, up to 20% of the city's hydrants went dry, according to LA Mayor Karen Bass.
Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
That's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
To
everything
fill the
I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally, you know that. I would fill up the hydrants myself. But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not!
The Palisades fire is already the most destructive in LA history. Two of our correspondents, Jacob Soberoff and Katie Tur, grew up there. Like so many others, they returned to find a heartbreaking scene.
Pacific Palisades, a Los Angeles neighborhood 20 miles west of downtown, is the epicenter of this week's disaster. More than 5,000 homes and structures destroyed. About 20,000 acres razed by the flames, and nearly 40,000 people ordered to flee for their lives.
I grew up in Pacific Palisades, and I've never seen anything like this. The whole town was gone as we knew it. This is the Palisades Public Library. It's still on fire. I brought my kids here, I don't know, in the last 4 or 5 months. With their library cards, they check books out of here. Look at the fire still burning in the roof.
Then I drove along the world-famous Sunset Boulevard.
To me, Sunset Boulevard is the heart of my community. There's not a single house left standing here. What do you do? What do they do? There's just never, ever, ever been anything like this.
One of my best friends grew up here in the Palisades, too. MSNBC anchor Katie Tur. Here she is as a kid in the neighborhood. A heavy hitter, getting a jump on her career. We drove through streets filled with so many of our childhood memories and dreams. Growing up, we had fires too.
Did you ever evacuate?
No, we never evacuated.
And that's what's crazy. It's like everybody thought in the event of a natural disaster, this area is untouchable.
They just thought fire would be contained before it ever got down here. Thankfully, it mostly was until now. And this is the most densely packed area in the Palisades.
Not a single house is left here.
If I was going home, I'd make a left on this street.
Why don't we go there? Was that your front door?
Yeah, and this was the living room. We put a Christmas tree in this corner right here. And behind that was a bathroom that my dad set up a dark room for me in because I loved photography.
Our nostalgia was short-lived. There's too much real misery here. Too many lives upended.
And we just moved in 2 days before the fire.
Do you know what you're going to do now? What were you able to get when you left?
Nothing.
Because you thought there's no way, right?
I was working really hard. I'm a couples therapist, and I was like working. I didn't know, and I came out and I saw a fireball, and I had to get out immediately.
Oh my God.
I grabbed. This is everything. I grabbed one painting.
With challenges. Experts note that while seawater and freshwater both effectively cool fires, salt water can harm the environment by salinizing soil, which inhibits plant growth and reduces fertility. Tim Chavez, a retired fire analyst, explains that salt can sterilize the soil, making it unsuitable for crops or vegetation.
Metropolitan water systems are not designed to sustain a firefight like this.
One house like this, you might have three or four
fire engines. We think we've lost 8,000 structures. So times 3 fire engines each, that requires 26,000 fire engines. I don't think the state of California has 26,000 fire engines.
Salt water also corrodes firefighting equipment like hoses and tanks, which are typically designed for freshwater. Despite this, LA County firefighters have utilised ocean water, deploying specialised super scoopers. These aircraft, resistant to saltwater corrosion, can collect and drop up to 1,600 gallons at a time. However, aerial firefighting in the region faces another challenge: strong Santa Ana winds. Pilots must execute precision drops while avoiding damage to buildings and vehicles.
What happened to the water system? Was it, and by the way, was it just overwhelmed? That you had so much that was used, we drew it down? Was it pipes? Was it electricity? It was a combination of pipes, electricities, and pumps. What was that drawdown? Impossible, because you lost 7,000+ structures right here anyway, and every single structure we lost had a pipe that was leaking, and we would have lost that water pressure anyway.
As of now, 16 other aircraft, including Firehawks and air tankers, are supporting efforts with fresh water. Once the Palisades fire is controlled, these resources may be redirected to other fires in Southern California.
Basically, my take on this particular situation, when I first heard about it, I was listening to other people talk. I know I'm a little late to the game or whatnot, but I was starting thinking, maybe it was conspiracy, maybe it was, bad government. Could be a combination of all. I'm not going to get too deep in that at this moment. But I want to take the time to really break down how a water system actually works. I don't know if a lot of people really understand it, and you may do, but this is for the people that don't. We're going to dive into a little deeper as the program goes on to break down how water is supplied to a city or whatnot, and how that a city could run out of water with multiple fires going at one time.
When fire hydrants ran dry in the Pacific Palisades, it sparked a wave of criticism and even misinformation.
Because Karen Bass didn't fill the reservoirs, so all the fire reservoirs were not, so the fire trucks are there, they couldn't pump water.
They cut the water off.
They don't have water.
Surveys show LA did have water, but amid widespread frustration and a report that a local reservoir in the Palisades was offline and empty due to repairs, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a review of Los Angeles water and power. Here's how the water supply system works and what we know about why hydrants ran out of water at the height of the Palisades fire. About 2/3 of LA County's water comes from sources outside of LA. And because LA is surrounded by mountains and hills, much of that water has to be pushed up to higher elevations.
Well, water is heavy, relatively speaking, and so it takes energy to pump it upstream.
Eric Porce, director of the California Institute for Water Resources, says you can think of the system sort of like a tree with interconnected branches. There are big trunk mains that move water from a source, like a water treatment plant or a reservoir, and carry it to smaller distribution mains, which split off from the trunk. From there, the water is moved through even smaller pipes or lateral lines that carry water to homes, businesses, and fire hydrants. In some areas, tanks and reservoirs are placed throughout the system to help maintain pressure, because pressure is what pushes water into all of the nodes. But during the LA wildfires, officials said intense demand overwhelmed the system, which drained several tanks and meant that there wasn't enough pressure to push water to hydrants up in the Palisades.
So I want to make sure that you understand there's water in the drum line that just cannot get off the hill because we cannot fill the tank fast enough.
Officials say there wasn't a lack of water in LA, and data shows that major California reservoirs were at or above historic averages when the fires broke out. But in a letter to LA officials, Newsom called the ongoing reports of the loss of water pressure to some local hydrants during the fires and the reported unavailability of water supplies from the Santa Ynez Reservoir deeply troubling. However, a former city official told the LA Times that given the severity of the fires, the area still would have experienced serious drops in pressure even with that reservoir.
Those distribution systems aren't really designed to manage wildfire, especially wildfire that was spreading at this rate.
Meanwhile, state officials are pushing back against claims that environmental policies caused LA to have water problems, as some blamed Newsom and the state's efforts to protect species like the Delta smeltfish by restricting the flow of some water to Southern California.
You're just letting water run into the Pacific? Because of what, a fish that no one's heard of? Does anybody care about the smeltfish?
Incoming President Trump posted he wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but didn't care about the people of California. Now the ultimate price is being paid.
So what's happened is a tragedy, and
The governor has not done a good job.
What do you say to the criticism that the state has mismanaged water supplies?
I think the facts speak for themselves. The fact that there is water in reservoirs beyond what is average traditionally for this time of year means that we are moving water when it is available. And I want to be very, very clear. The way that we are moving water and have been moving water and conditions that we're seeing in Southern California around access to that water, it has nothing to do with protected fish species under the law.
Carla Namath and other California officials say one of the biggest issues was actually wind.
The fire is being fueled by a combination of strong winds and surrounding topography, which is making it extremely challenging for our personnel that are assigned to this incident.
Is there anything California or LA officials could have done better to mitigate the threat of these fires?
There will be lots of opportunity after this event to understand what happened. And we will learn from that, and especially in the context of climate, and we will adjust and move forward. I think it's really important for folks to understand that a fire suppression strategy for a wildland fire is not dealt with localized community fire hydrants. It's just not the right scale.
How would you get water from one source to another, especially when it's going uphill or whatnot, because what you don't have is gravity. So you have to put some type of pump in there to build the pressure to get it pulled from one section to go to another. Say if you're trying to get water from downhill to up and hill like Palisade is, you need some kind of way to pump the water uphill. And that's the first step in getting the water from one place to another. Even if you had a certain amount of pumps pushing water to a whole city, if you don't have some way to hold the reserve water, you're going to run out because the pumps they can't pump but so much, and you can't have but so many pumps, either because of the expense and probably actually location where you can put this stuff, because a lot of people don't want these type of utility operations going on their property. So you have to be able to cut down on the amount of pumps, but you need to have somewhere to store the water so that when people are asleep or whatnot, or during the day when they're not using as much water, the reserve tank or whatnot has a way of filling up. So these pumps, no matter what you got, will have to go 24 hours a day to steady pour water from a source. But when people's usage go up, like when they wake up in the morning at night, they're going to use more water. In that particular instance, you need to have some type of reserve, basically, where you can get the water from. That's where putting in some type of tank, which is basically a reservoir, comes in. So you can store a whole lot of water in a space so that when peak times come up, it's basically a situation where the water needs of the city can still be met without overpowering the pump system, so to speak. But he's going to get into it a little bit more.
Add a water tower to the system and try this experiment again. It's midnight and demand is low, but your pump is running full wide open. Instead of water flowing to customers, it's flowing into your water tower, filling the tank slowly but surely. As morning comes and demand starts to increase, your pump continues running. It's not able to meet the demand on its own, but the stored water in the tank is making up the difference. All your customers are getting the water they need. As people start their day, demand again drops below average, but the pump keeps running and the extra flow goes into the tank. Demand again begins to spike as residents of the city start cooking dinner, taking baths, and watering the plants. All this extra water use drains the tank again before most people go to bed and the cycle starts again. It's to see how storage makes your water system more efficient.
We have had some issues with water. If you stick enough straws into a glass of water, it's going to empty faster.
The biggest ever wildfires have raged in Los Angeles' neighborhood for nearly a week. 24 people have been confirmed dead, 200,000 people have been displaced, and around 12,000 structures have been destroyed, along with 35,000 acres of land. Emergency officials have also faced a nightmare situation with fire hydrants running out of water. At some point this week, Up to 20% of the city's hydrants went dry, according
It's supposed to be the water to put out the Palisades fire. This is the Santa Ynez Reservoir. It's the water supply basically for the Palisades. When they first started fighting the Palisades fire, they ran out of water extremely quickly. Wednesday, 3 a.m., they were basically out. And there's been a lot of talk on why this happened. So how long has this reservoir been empty for?
Since February of last year. There was no communication from the Department of Water and Power to LAFD that there was a water supply issue.
The firefighters, when they started fighting the fires, no one informed them that the reservoir was empty. This reservoir holds 117 million gallons of water. The fire department was using a water supply from 3 backup tanks, each one only holding 1 million gallons of water. They say it's closed for maintenance to repair the lid that's on top of it. I don't know a lot about reservoir maintenance, but there's literally no construction materials or vehicles anywhere in sight. Also, with a reservoir like this, you can refill it or start to refill it. So another question is, if they saw the Santa Ana winds were coming and we have this remarkably dry wet season, why was there no attempt to start refilling it back up? I know I threw a lot out there, but I think we need some answers, guys. Some real
Talk about you have to have some way to store large quantities of water in one place to be able to meet just day-to-day needs, especially, for a large city with a lot of people, using water at one time. And it seems like this situation in California, like the other guy was talking about, one of his main reservoirs that held millions of gallons of water didn't even have anything in it. So I don't know if it's a situation where they had, the pumps went out, where they didn't have enough water to actually fill this particular reservoir, but that would make a lot of sense. If you got reservoirs around the city and there's no water in them before a fire breaks out, you can't wait until, some type of situation where you urgently need the water. Water has to already be available before anything even happens so that you have a resource to tap from, especially when you got hundreds of fire trucks going at the same time, pulling water, from each hydrant. Then you combine that with houses and buildings and businesses burning down, which means pipes and whatnot are bursting all over the place. You got water leaks going on all over. All that's going to do is lower the water pressure also. And with all that water leaking and the fires going on and all these trucks coming into town pulling water at the same time, it's no way that a system that is not adequately put together could keep up with the water usage of, a burning fire, so to speak, especially when it's burning all over the city at one time. There's just no way. And one of my questions basically were, they're sitting right there by the sea, they should have plenty of water. Why didn't they use that? But as you see, we really need to use fresh water if we want to try to grow anything else on the land, because they basically talked about it's going to basically get the ground real salty or whatnot, so it won't grow anything else. It won't grow vegetation if you throw a lot of salt water on. So they try, but it seemed like, in this emergency situation, they had no choice. But I can understand why they didn't just go straight to the sea and pull the water and ruin the land, because even after we put the fires out, people still have to live here. You need to be able to grow your food. You still need trees, to produce oxygen or whatnot. It's, we still need growth. We need greenery. So it's not just as simple as just going out and flying over the sea, grabbing a bunch of salt water and just throwing it everywhere, because you may do decades of damage to the soil. So just as a recap, the water, once you find your source that you want to use or whatnot, it has to be pumped basically from one area to another. Basically, you're taking it out of this reservoir and you're pumping it into many reservoirs. And these reservoirs are filling up usually during the night or whatnot when people are sleeping. And as the tanks fill up or whatnot, people start to wake up and they start bathing and whatnot. The water in the tank is what's going down, but the pump can still continue to push at the same time. Because say between 6 and 9, 6 and 10, the water's going down. Then after about 10 a.m. when the people have gone to work and things are kind of settle in, then the pumps are still running 24 hours a day. Then they can push the water pressure back up in these tanks so that the reserve is still there. So when people get off from work or whatnot and, start watering the lawns and bathing, whatever the case may be, and start draining the water down again, we have the reserves will already be in the storage tank, so to speak, so that you don't lose water pressure in high peak times or whatnot. All right, I think we're going to wrap the video up right here. It's getting a little bit long. It's some things that I think need to be broke down, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So I'm going to make a part 2, and I'll see you in the next one.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy.